Hello, folks. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. The video you're seeing right now is some footage of Gaza before and after. The atrocities continue against this small city of Palestinians. The full-on obliteration of that society continue. These videos are horrifying of the amount of destruction that has been done. And I'm going to bring you new information during this hour. Information about the fact that all the cameras that view the border wall between Israel and Gaza were turned off on October 7th. I'm going to bring you information on the U.S. sending thousands upon thousands of more bombs to Israel in order to perpetrate this genocide. I'm going to bring you information about how even at the top level, the U.S. is now saying this is the end of the war in Ukraine, the proxy war that the U.S. has been perpetrating for months and months and months, killing and destroying the lives of millions in one form or another. But the U.S. is wrapping it up there. We're pretty much done, fighting Russia to the last Ukrainian. I'm going to bring you more information about that, information I have not brought you before. So all of that and much more is coming up on this live stream today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for caring enough to be a part of this hour. Please take a moment to hit subscribe, hit share, hit some thumbs up, and all that good stuff. But I wanted to point out that you got to be excited that Israel continues to set records. A lot of records have been set, pretty long-standing records. Some of them going back to World War II. Israel. Some of them even beating World War II. But Israel has set records in terms of the number of journalists killed in just 2 months. They've set records in the number of children killed in just 2 months. They've set records in the number of hospitals targeted in just 2 months. They've set records in terms of the number of civilians killed in only 2 months. Not that record doesn't stand forever. I mean, it doesn't go back to forever, but for a long period of time, this is the most civilians that have been managed to be killed in such a short period of time. They've set records for the number of UN workers that they've managed to kill in just 2 months. Israel is just setting record after record. Very impressive work. I would definitely put them on my fantasy genocide team. If you are still formulating yours, you could win a lot of points. You could really do well there. Just record after record after record for Israel. And like I said, the footage you're seeing right now, if you're not listening to the podcast, thank you for listening to the podcast. Those of you who are just listening to the audio version, which is called the Lee Camp Show on Spotify and other platforms. But for those of you watching the live stream right now, this is before and after footage of Gaza, just the sheer destruction that has happened, that Israel has perpetrated. And one of the main stories I wanted to bring you today is U.S. involvement in this. I'm not sure people really understand the numbers of bombs that are being dropped. I did tell you, and sometimes it's tough to figure out these numbers because Israel's trying their best to not report them. The U.S. only reports some of what's going on. So these numbers are, people can't even catch up to the amount of bombs that are being dropped and really have accurate numbers. But we do know that enough has been dropped over these past 2 months to equate to 2 Hiroshima atomic bombs. We do know that enough has been dropped to equate to more than 10 kilograms of explosives per every man, woman, and child in Gaza, which is 2.3 million. Over 50% of those are children that they are bombing. Over 50% of Gazans, are children under 18. But in terms of the U.S. responsibility for this, antiwar.com is reporting that the U.S. sent Israel 15,000 bombs since October 7th. So when we hear this, these words, these meaningless words that come out of the faces of our ruling elite about how they would like to see less targeting of civilians and more care for civilian life and blah, blah, blah. I plan on getting to more of that as we go along. But as they say those things, it's all horseshit. It's all, we've sent 15,000 bombs to Israel since October 7th. 15,000. And it's really more than that. And let's also, we mentioned that I brought you a story several weeks ago about how Biden and the White House were working to pass something saying they didn't have to report anything about the number of bombs that the U.S. and what type of munitions the U.S. is sending to Israel, which would be unprecedented. Even in the proxy war in Ukraine, the U.S. has been reporting what kinds of munitions, largely they've been reporting it, that they're sending to Ukraine. Now we know from the CBS and CNN reports that 70% of those munitions sent to Ukraine were not actually getting to the front lines. Most of them, many of them, were being stolen and put onto the black market. Maybe some of those ending up in the hands of Hamas, for all of you Israel supporters out there, which, let's face it, the term support, it's a real stretching of a term right there. That'd be like if you were out, you helped your friend Andy shove a body into a wood chipper, and then you come home and tell your wife, I was out supporting Andy. I don't think you're using that word the way it works. I don't think that word means what you think it means. So the Wall Street Journal has published details about the White House's secretive arms transfers to Israel since October 7th. The U.S. has provided Israel with 57,000 artillery shells and 15,000 bombs, which, funnily enough, roughly equates to what many are saying is the number of dead in Gaza. The number that have been murdered by Israel is 15,000, which with nearly half of those, maybe over half of those, being children. So that Wall Street Journal article includes over 5,000 bombs, which are 2,000-pound bunker busters. So as the U.S., which of course you cannot drop strategically and just hit a few people. They are the least smart bombs of all the non-smart bombs, and no bombs are smart. But the 2,000-pound bunker buster that just obliterates whole neighborhoods, that is kind of the least specific, up to, unless you were going to drop a nuclear warhead, kind of the least specific bomb you could drop. And that's what we're sending to Israel. So we send this stuff to Israel, and then we say, we'd like for you to have some more concern about civilians. You wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. No, you don't care. Bullshit. You do not care. According to a list of weapons obtained by the journal, the U.S. has shipped Israel more than 5,000 MK-82 unguided or dumb bombs. I didn't know dumb bombs was an actual term. I just knew that smart bombs is not as smart as you'd like to think. More than 5,400 MK-84, 2,000-pound warhead bombs, over 1,000 GBU, 39 small diameter bombs, and approximately 3,000 JDAMs. The U.S. has additionally shipped 57,000 155 mm shells to Israel. And I think something you should remember while we're talking about the tens of thousands, 15,000 bombs that the U.S. has sent to Israel is this is with your tax dollars, right? And I know MMT, it's not really with your tax, but whatever. People believe it's with their tax, which is all that really matters. If you believe it's with your tax dollars, you're sending tax dollars, it's kind of with your tax dollars. So you're sending your tax dollars in to murder children, to murder innocent people across Gaza, to destroy the entire society there, which was them making the most of being in a concentration camp. Fred says 15,000 civilians have been killed, which I believe is what I said. Anyway, but yes, 15,000 bombs have been sent and 15,000 civilians have been killed. Although the Gaza Health Ministry, which everyone, including the UN and the World Health Organization, say is very accurate at telling how many have died there. They don't lie. They're very accurate on that number. But even they have said at times that they've just lost the ability to keep track of the thousands that have been murdered by Israel. But yeah, this is your tax dollars. This is your money. You and me send money in so that we can help kill children every day. Every day, hundreds of children murdered. And as I brought to you just the other day in one of my live streams, the secret weapon that may kill more than the bombs ultimately is disease. And it is not unintentional. Israel wants disease to rip through Gaza. And one of the ways you do that is by destroying the health system which Israel has done and continues to do, and by forcing all the people together, not in housing units, but in tents and cots, and forcing millions onto tiny, tiny areas. That's how disease spreads best. And so Israel is doing all that, hoping that disease will kill more than even their bombs are doing. And let's see if I can find it. The other thing is you got to remember that many top Israeli officials are outwardly saying essentially that this is a genocide. They may not use the G word, but they are outwardly saying that they are attempting to cause or perpetrate genocide. So this is a senior elected Israeli official, and as Alan McLeod said, they just can't help themselves but continuing to make genocidal comments. And one of the things this guy has tweeted, Avigdor Lieberman, he has tweeted, "There are no innocents in Gaza," which of course is genocidal talk. Anytime you take an entire city, you say there are no innocents there, we can murder them all. You are saying we are excited and willing to perpetrate genocide. It is an admission of genocide, because you cannot take a whole city and say there's no innocents there unless you want to come up with some reason to murder them all. It'd be like me saying there are no innocents in my neighborhood. Well, you sound like someone who's getting ready to commit mass murder, don't you? Because if you're saying there's no innocents there and that it's okay to kill them, well, what do you think you're going to do? So this is a justification for genocide, and I don't think any international law, international lawyer, any international law that is actually respected would deny that this is exactly how genocidal behavior is justified. And so here they are outwardly saying it. I mean, for anyone still defending or quote unquote supporting Israel's actions, it's not even like we have to come up with our own theories as to what they're doing. They have said outwardly in many cases, and that one I just brought you is just one of many Israeli officials saying these things, that there are no innocent civilians, which of course is, I don't care if you hate every Palestinian you've ever met, which of course makes you racist, but even if you hate every Palestinian you've ever met, still, I would hope you agree that children and young children are innocent. And if you say, no, they're not, well, then we know you're not a rational actor. You're a sociopath, a psychopath, and you have made that choice that you can just murder anyone in this ongoing geopolitical game. Here's some more. This is the Wall Street Journal article, among others, saying the U.S. is sending 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs to Gaza in order to obliterate Gaza. So while all of the words, not all the words, but some of the words coming from Biden and Blinken and some of the others say, oh, we care about civilians, we want to protect a few civilians, there's actually a statement. I think I might be bringing it to you. I can't always remember everything that I lined up here. But there's a statement from the Secretary of Defense, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, saying, making multiple statements on protecting civilians and how we need to protect more civilians, and how Israel, he actually says Israel could have a strategic loss if they don't protect civilians more. All of those things are lovely to hear, and some people are very excited to hear, oh, yeah, he said something about civilians. But those are the words. In the actions, in the goddamn actions of our government, of the United States, we are sending more and more and more genocidal bombs to Israel. We also have troops on the ground, as I've covered in previous live streams. We have American troops, both in Israel and flying, doing various other forms of helping in this genocide, including piloting drones over Gaza. It's unclear why some special forces are in Israel, what their plan is, what their goal is. But there are others. There are some reports from Gaza that they've seen U.S. special forces there. I don't know if those have been verified, but we do know they're in Israel, and we do know they're helping Israel with this genocide. That part is undeniable. Israel, in their effort to, partially their effort to claim that they, aren't responsible for these civilians, or they're working to protect these civilians. By the way, as I keep going, and I know I try to get through a lot, so I try to go fast, but please remember to click subscribe and click share. And I'm getting close to that 70,000 mark on Rumble. I'd love to hit that. So if you're watching at Rumble, please make sure to hit follow. It's all free. And yeah, on YouTube, hit subscribe there. YouTube has actually allowed my channel to grow a little bit over the past few months for the first time in 4 years. Basically, for about 3 years, I've been stuck at like 42,000 followers, but now we're over 50. And so I'd love for you to subscribe there as well. Anyway, moving on to back what I was moving on to back what I was saying. You know that expression. I'm moving on, going back. Moving on to back what I was saying is Israel, in their ongoing efforts to try and make this seem like they're not choosing to kill civilians and that they're just fighting a war. And if you watch the mainstream media propaganda, one of the things that clearly has been agreed upon, sometimes in those first few days when some of this shit breaks out, like October 7th, 8th, 9th, the mainstream media has not really solidified their kind of self-censorship, how exactly they're detailing these things. And so one of the things that seems to have been solidified is kind of congealed like a jello mold over the past several weeks for the mainstream media propaganda, both in Britain and the US and Canada, et cetera, is to say this is fighting, right? In the fighting, quote unquote, between Hamas and Israel, it's fighting, right? It's all fighting. Even as Israel bombs hospitals and cuts off water and cuts off electricity and bombs schools and kills UN workers and targets journalists, as all of that is going on, it's fighting between Israel and Hamas. Let's call everything fighting between Israel and Hamas. Oh yeah, did you murdered those UN workers in your fight between Israel and Hamas? You bombed a hospital in your fight between Israel and Hamas? It's a ridiculous propaganda term, but they're using it a lot. So in this ongoing fight, Israel, to try and one of the things they're doing to try and claim that they aren't actually targeting civilians, or it's not us, it's not even our choice to do it. Well, they're blaming it on AI. And I don't doubt that they also are using AI. I'm not saying they aren't, but why not blame it on AI? This is coming from The Guardian. It's called The Gospel, is the name of the program. Israel uses AI to select bombing targets in Gaza. Israel's military has made no secret of the intensity of its bombardment of the Gaza Strip in the early days of the offensive. The head of its Air Force spoke of relentless around-the-clock airstrikes. His forces, he said, we're only striking military targets, but he added, we are not being surgical. So again, they're admitting maybe he'll give a little lip service to striking military targets, but we're not really paying attention. There has, however, been relatively little attention paid to the methods used by the Israeli Defense Forces to select targets. And as Israel resumes its offensive, so far killed 15,000 people, the IDF has long burnished its reputation for technical prowess, and it has been using AI technology, deploying an AI target creation platform called The Gospel, which has significantly accelerated a lethal production line of targets that officials have compared to, quote, a factory. The Guardian can reveal new details about The Gospel and its central role in the war. This article also draws on testimonies from 972 magazine, and which interviewed current and former sources, etc. But the reason that they even bother selecting AI, using AI to select targets, is because then they can say there was a selection process. When in fact, before AI was a thing, they would have to justify how they chose to strike a hospital or how they chose to strike a school or a bakery. And, you'd get all these ham-handed excuses. You still get those excuses about, oh, well, there's a tunnel under that hospital, or we saw a Hamas guy walk into that bakery to get a sandwich, and so we just blew up the whole bakery. They had to give these excuses. Now they're moving towards where they don't even have to give an excuse. They just say the AI program told us that is a Hamas stronghold. The AI program, which you will never see the programming of, because essentially all AI is the programming is generally both by nations and corporations considered proprietary and covered up, unless it's open AI, which is rather rare. So they'll never have to show any justification for how the AI decided these things. They'll just say, look, we put all of the factors in and the AI told us bomb that school, even if it kills hundreds of children. It is just an excuse. I don't think that this AI has any better, vision on where to bomb than your average psychopathic Israeli IDF higher up. So it's just intended to really give them excuse, I believe. Now, that being said, maybe they've programmed in there, how to commit a genocide most effectively, and the AI is a genocide creation machine, and they're very excited that they can commit genocide so quickly and effectively. Maybe they even, if they really had if they're really being honest with their AI, because obviously AI depends on what you what parameters you plug into it. I mean, normally, although it's getting loose from those borders, but maybe they instructed it to most effectively destroy the Gazan infrastructure in order to cause disease to run rampant and in order to cause the most misery among the surviving refugees within Gaza, the surviving community. And maybe that's what the AI is aiming for. Who knows? That's the beauty of AI. You don't have to give an excuse for the horror show that you're creating. Isn't it beautiful? And so then there's the question of how much the U.S. and, well, hold on, to stay on AI for a second. This is kind of as we see moving towards this AI dystopia, this is the next step, right? We're seeing the use of AI to cause genocide. We're seeing the use of AI to fly drones. And now the U.S., the Pentagon has said they are moving towards allowing AI to decide whether to drop bombs on its own, meaning you will legit have no human being involved in the entire process. The drone goes up, it flies over somewhere, let's say in Ukraine, or flies over Russian forces or whatever, and the AI entirely chooses to bomb, and who knows what it hits. And of course, then you have an AI system that can murder people and can decide who to murder. And those type of things can run loose real quick, can run out of, turns out it wasn't hitting inside Ukraine. Turns out it was hitting inside Poland. Oh, now we've got all NATO involved. Oh, now we're spiraling towards World War because an AI system decided to bomb outside its parameters or whatever. It really is just sprinting as fast as we can towards a dystopian hellhole. And there's little talk about it. I mean, this is one article in The Guardian talking about Israel's using cool, and most people still view it as like cool, like, oh, awesome. They're using AI to fight the wars. Yeah. Like we're in some sort of futuristic, awesome society. No, we're in the dystopia. We're in the one they were trying to stop from happening in the Terminator movies. That's the future we're heading towards. I mean, this just goes to show, again, the steps of AI spiraling out of control. They happen very fast. We're less than, what are we, less than a year from when people started to really realize that AI could have, I'm talking your average person, not your tech person, but your average American started to realize AI could actually be influential with, ChatGPT, et cetera. Oh, this thing can actually do some impressive stuff. And it started, we're about a year removed from that. And already you have AI deciding how to best perpetrate a genocide. You have AI deciding when to drop bombs out of drones that are not manned by humans. It really does just spiral out of control so quickly. And we're not even having the discussions. There's not even like think tanks devoted to how to deal with this horrible AI dystopia. They're not even sitting down and chit-chatting about it. Because we're run by psychopaths and sociopaths, and our system uniquely rises them to the top. If you're a good guy, if you actually care about humans, you do not rise to the top of these systems of the capitalist corporate structure. You do not get there. Even in the smallest levels, you generally rise to the top much easier. In fact, the sociopath who was the head, I forget his name, the head of NXIVM, that they called it a sex cult, although sex was a small part of it. It really was a control cult, which I guess all cults are, but and an enslavement cult, which he also did that as well. But so that maniac who was the head of NXIVM, one of the things they have him on tape saying, he didn't know he was being recorded, is that he wasn't saying he's a psychopath, but he was saying he was pretending he wasn't, which he is, but he's pretending he wasn't. And he said, the world's much easier to operate within if you're a psychopath, because you can just view everyone as chess pieces and you don't actually have to think about their lives, what it matters to their lives, whether they live or die, whether they end up doing so. And he ended up imprisoning a woman in a single room for, it was either 2 or 3 years. She was never able to leave that room. And it seemed that he gave little thought to it because she's just a chess piece. She's an interesting chess piece to play. And that was how he viewed it. So, and that's how he ended up, he ran a very large, successful business for many years. And that's how he was able to do it is once you do not think, someone says his name is, Keith Raniere. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Brant. And it's much easier to operate in this society if you don't actually care about other humans. And so that's how you get to the Israeli government that is willing to just bomb children endlessly and willing to just let AI run rampant. Okay, we created an AI. It's going to tell us where to bomb. We're never even going to check whether we care about whether it's hitting civilians. Doesn't matter to us. Doesn't matter at all. But okay, so moving past AI for a moment to the involvement, the connection between the U.S. and Britain and the U.K. in this genocide. And of course, there is blood all over America's hands, all over British hands during this genocide. And here it's like a 10-second clip or something. It is Jeremy Corbyn asking Foreign Minister Leo Ducherti about whether Britain has troops on the ground in Gaza. And you'd think that'd be a pretty easy question to answer, wouldn't you? You'd think that's a yes or no right there.
And can he assure us there are no British soldiers on the ground in Gaza?
Speaker, unsurprisingly, I don't share his assessment or his view of the context. And of course, it's clear that the Israeli objective is to defend itself against the terrorist group of Hamas.
And can he?
No, that was the whole answer. He said, Jeremy Corbyn says, can you assure us there are no British troops on the ground in Gaza? And the guy goes, well, I disagree with his view of things. And Israel has the right to defend itself. You didn't even pretend to address it. You didn't even say like, oh, interesting question. Like he could have just responded like, I don't know if you saw The Simpsons last night, but after 30 whatever years they've been going, still solid. He didn't even say, like, he was nowhere near the response to that. Since it's just 10 seconds or 20 seconds, let's hear this again. Starts with Jeremy Corbyn.
And can he assure us there are no British soldiers on the ground in Gaza?
Speaker, unsurprisingly, I don't share his assessment or his view of the context. And of course, it's clear that the Israeli objective is to defend itself against the terrorist group of Hamas.
And then he just sits back down. I love that he doesn't even keep talking. It'd be one thing. One of the best ways to avoid answering a question is just to keep blathering about something unrelated. And eventually people just forget that you were even speaking about responding to a question. He didn't even do that. He just gives one meaningless sentence. Israel has the right to defend itself. And then I'm pretty sure he says against Hamas, which, first of all, yes, I do think Israel has the right to defend itself against Hamas. But I think he forgot it was Hamas. Can you promise us there's no British troops on the ground in Gaza? Israel's right to defend itself. Thank you. Good night. So this very well could mean that Israel does have troops on the ground in Gaza. But even if that's not what it means, I can almost promise you what it means is that Israel has troops on the ground Britain. Did I say Israel the first time? Britain very well could have troops on the ground in Gaza, but now that might necessarily be what he means by avoiding the question. He might have avoided the question for another reason, which is because if he says, no, we do not have troops on the ground in Gaza, then an easy follow-up that you would assume the next person might ask is, does the UK have troops on the ground in Israel? And then I would imagine Britain would be like, because I would imagine, same as the US, British troops are in Israel. And, how much they're actually doing, how much they're partaking in this genocide, tough to say. But I would imagine that's probably why he's not answering. Although there might be British troops in Gaza. I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me that much. There are Israel. So the UK has been keeping it quiet, but there have been weapons transfers from Britain to, or likely weapons transfer from Britain to Israel. And this article from Cyprus Mail is saying, so Akrotiri, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, probably not, is an island. And this article is saying that given its size, capacity, and proximity to the Middle East, and the fact that British planes have been seen flying there, this article believes it's likely that they are delivering weapons to Israel. Both Nicosia and London have denied the sovereign base areas on the island are being used as a conduit for weapons transfers to Israel amid the ongoing conflict in Gaza. But the UK government's reluctance to provide any information as to what material is in fact being airlifted to Israel via Akrotiri, while neither proving nor disproving the proposition, appears to leave the matter in open question. The issue surfaced last week when the UK Defense News website Declassified UK reported that the RAF had made over 30 military transport flights to Tel Aviv since Israel began bombing Gaza. And if it's not bombs that they're delivering, then what the hell are they delivering with military transport flights from Britain going to Tel Aviv? You think it's earmuffs? You think the British military is delivering, the bedazzled like iPhone cases, so the IDF can have a little more fun out there while they're waiting in the bush? It seems like that probably munitions would be the only secret thing they would be possibly delivering, and so of course all of this stuff is just adding to the mountains of evidence that the U.S. and UK are heavily involved in one form or another with this genocide. We have our entire Congress voting to quote unquote support Israel, like supporting Andy as he pushes the body into the wood chipper. Support this idea. But our entire Congress, it was something like 412 to 1 in the House, 97 to 0 in the Senate. They're just falling over themselves to support this horrific destruction of human life. So I want to bring you another analysis or another point about why Israel is doing what they're doing and the doctrines they claim to be going by in order to do these things, these horrible things. And that is the Daya, is it pronounced Daya? It's spelled, I guess, Daya. It's spelled about 4 different ways, so in different sources. But the Daya doctrine. Now, I already brought you stuff on the Hannibal doctrine or Hannibal directive, which Israel goes by, which says that if a hostage is taken, murder the hostage and everyone around them. Murder the hostage takers, murder the hostage, murder everyone. So if the first instance of this, I think it was the first, was against Lebanon, where Hezbollah took one Israeli soldier, and then Israel murdered 200 people, including a hostage. They bombed 200 people because that is their view of how to deal with hostages, is just murder everyone. Sorry, I gotta sneeze real quick. Okay, so here's the Daya doctrine coming from Tim Langman. He writes about it, and he talks about how it is the name given to Israel's current military doctrine, which is being used in Gaza. It's a military strategy. This is coming from Wikipedia, which, as I always like to point out, if you're learning from something from Wikipedia, you're reading the liberal version of it, the kind of whitewashed, U.S. is not that bad, kind of liberalized version of history. But so when something like this gets into Wikipedia, it means it definitely is a thing. Like when you hear about awful things that the U.S. or Israel has done, and they're in Wikipedia, that means there's really no denying it, because even in the liberal view of history, it's in there. So it's a military strategy of asymmetric warfare outlined by former Israel Defense Forces Chief of General Staff Gadi Eisenkot, which encompasses the destruction of the civilian infrastructure of regimes deemed to be hostile as a measure calculated to create civilian suffering to pressure combatants, and endorses the employment of disproportionate force to secure that end. So it is the plan of civilian suffering. We are told over and over again, both by Israel and by the U.S. media and by the U.S. government, that Israel is just fighting Hamas, and civilian suffering outside of that is collateral damage. Oopsie, we had to do it in order to fight the Hamas, to fight Hamas, but that's not the case. This is the plan. This is the aim. Civilian suffering is the goal, and I've brought you other evidence of that in previous live streams recently, but it is a calculated level of civilian suffering. Maybe they put it into their AI program. Maybe their chatbot tells them how to create civilian suffering. The doctrine is named after the Daya neighborhood of Beirut, where Hezbollah was headquartered during the 2006 Lebanon war, which was heavily damaged by the IDF. Daya was the Shia quarter in Beirut that was razed by the Israeli Air Force during the 2006 Lebanon war. So it was the Shia quarter in Beirut that they just flattened, that they just turned into a parking lot. Naftali Bennett told Haaretz is a well-known newspaper, in March 2017, in an interview, the Lebanese institutions, its infrastructure, airports, power stations, traffic junctions, Lebanese army bases, they should all be, this is a quote, legitimate targets if a war breaks out. Everything of the society you should be able to destroy, no matter how many civilians you kill. So it continues. That's what we should already be saying to them and the world now. If Hezbollah fires missiles at the Israeli home front, this will mean sending Lebanon back to the Middle Ages. He claimed that this strategy would speed up international intervention and shorten the campaign. But of course, there's not any proof of that. Generally, when you really harm a society like this, you actually just radicalize more people. You actually just take the remaining people who've lost their families and lost children and lost wives and husbands. You take them and make them willing to just destroy and do everything they can to try and fight, because that is how we respond when our family is murdered, when we see family and friends murdered like this, is many people respond with violence, respond with whatever ability they have. So the idea that this shortens the conflict is bullshit. And so they are going by a doctrine that says, if you are attacked, destroy the society. Now, something else that is really important here is there were moments of this in World War II, right? There were moments, the Dresden firebombing and the atomic bomb dropping, just to name the stuff that the U.S. and Britain did, not even to get into what Germany and the Nazis did, which, of course, the Holocaust in general is a deciding that we're, quote unquote, at war with a people, the Jews, and deciding to just murder them all. Man, woman, and child doesn't matter. And that was a genocide. And we now very much, it'd be tough to find, other than a white supremacist, someone who does not define that as a genocide. So, other than the most vocal white supremacists, honestly. So this, after World War II, there were several international laws passed to try and make that not happen again. Make it a war crime. If two countries are battling each other, you cannot just obliterate civilians that are not fighting that war. You cannot just bomb hospitals and schools. You cannot just kill innocent civilians. All of that was made illegal by international law so that we as humans would behave a little more like we gave a shit about each other's humanity. A little more like that. That was the aim of these international laws, the Geneva Conventions, etc. And Israel is not only breaking all of those laws, but they have doctrines that they're going by where they say they get to break those laws. They get to violate these international laws. They get to behave as barbarians and sociopaths as they murder children on a wide scale basis, on a large scale basis. It really is horrifying, but these doctrines, how it is Israel's deciding to do what they're doing, are really important, and not many people are talking about them. They're not really, the mainstream media won't discuss them because they really do. This one and the Hannibal Directive, they really do upend what your mainstream media is telling you, or what Israel and U.S. government, et cetera, are telling you. They're telling you Israel's doing their damnedest to protect civilians in this thing. But by the doctrines they're following that it's not an accident that they're killing all these. It is the aim. It is the goal. It's just unbelievable. Okay, so now I want to bring you, and this goes along with ongoing evidence that Israel not only knew about October 7th, but in various ways facilitated October 7th. I'm not going to claim that they knew everything that was going to happen, and I also would not claim that Hamas did not murder a lot of people, but I brought you many different aspects of evidence that a lot of the killing that happened on October 7th was done by the IDF because of the Hannibal Directive. For one, I brought you video of one of the tank gunners, one of the 20-year-old female tank gunners that was being interviewed on television, saying that she fired into civilian structures. After asking whether there's civilians in there, her commander said, "I don't know, just fire," etc. So there's a lot of evidence of that. This latest evidence, though, in terms of Israel knowing, and by the way, New York Times has also said Israel knew this was going to happen. That's something else that I brought you the other day. The New York Times did a report on how over a year ago, Israel had very detailed instructions of what was going to happen on October 7th. I don't know if they knew the date. I don't think they did, but basically they knew it was going to happen, and they, in multiple ways, allowed it to happen. That doesn't mean everybody in Israeli government, etc. But anyway, that being said, I want to bring you something that very few are reporting about: the video cameras on that border wall with Gaza, about what happened with those video cameras on October 7th. I'm going to bring you that and several more stories over at rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's rumble.com/Lee Camp. Please join me over there. It's free to keep watching. Also, if you're watching on Locals, it all will maintain, the stream will stay exactly the same. So Locals and Rumble. And if you feel like you've gotten 38 cents out of this so far, please join LeeCamp.net. Oh, and actually, before I go over to Rumble, let me just show you. Another way to support this show is I have put all of the various kinds of merch I have, which is not much, but it's a little something, in one place. It's at LeeCamp.com/merch. And so it's got the Yard Rock stuff there. Many of you know I'm the campaign manager for a rock I found in my front yard who's running for president, and he's better than any one of the two corporate candidates. An inanimate object of any kind would be far better, but this rock is particular. He's got a real strong personality, real great guy. And anyway, so any of the Yard Rock merchandise, half of the proceeds from that go to eliminate medical debt. We've already eliminated $70,000 of medical debt from struggling Americans. That's at so the whole campaign is at yardrock2024.com. But all the merch, including, what do I have? I have 2 albums. So those would be the downloads of those comedy albums in front of live audiences. I have my new ebook, Dangerous Ideas. That's there. I have 2 previous books, Moment of Clarity and Bullet Points and Punchlines. Those are hard copies, and those are there. And I have Redacted Tonight merch as well. Redacted Tonight mug, Redacted Tonight t-shirt, in case you want to go old school, my old TV show. And you can buy that. You can make a great gift for the holidays. How about that, folks? And so it helps support the show. It's also just cool stuff. And if you want to hear my stand-up, like Pepper Away the Tears Away, Pepper Spray the Tears Away was my stand-up comedy hour from like 10 years ago. But here's the thing, almost all of it still holds up. Sadly, very little has changed. Almost all of it holds up. And so it's all at leecamp.com. Click the merch tab. And I hope you'll go over there and grab some of that. And it supports the show. Also, if you get a Yard Rock, one of the Yard Rock pieces of merchandise, half of those proceeds go to eliminate medical debt around the nation. So you're helping people out too. So here, I'll throw that link in the chat there. Okay, let's talk about those video cameras on the border of Gaza and the mystery around them on October 7th. And for the rest of you, I hope you will join me at rumble.com/LeeCamp. If you aren't there right now, rumble.com/LeeCamp. That's rumble.com/LeeCamp. All right. See you there, as well as my locals page. And for those of you at locals, you honestly make this show possible. So I couldn't do it without you. You guys are the best. I might try and bring you a little bit extra segment here